So today's daf is Sheqalim Daf, starting at Halacha Gimel, the very top of the daf. We would call it Mishnah Gimel. They call it Halacha. Hamichanes ma'ot ve'amar harei elu l'shikli. A person who gathers money and says, "These are for my machatzit shekel." So he's gathering smaller coins for the value of machatzit shekel. Beit Shammai omrim motaran nidava. If he takes too much, in other words, let's say he's taking. It would be like if a person had to give, let's say, 50 cents, which is not what they have to give, but let's say they did. And they start taking, nickels and pennies and dimes, and it turned out that they had 60 cents instead of 50. Okay? So what do you do now? What with the other 10 cents? So Beit Shammai says, Motaran nidava. You don't need to give that as machatzit shekel, but it has to be given to the Beit HaMikdash as nidava, as a voluntary offering. Because it acquires some Kedusha as well.
So the person realizes that he had too much before he gives it?
Right, before he gives it, but after he counted it already.
And he gives the exact change for the half shekel, and then the rest...
Then the extra gives something else, right. So Beit Hillel omrim motaran chulin. Beit Hillel says, no, whatever is additional on machatzit shekel, you never intended to give 60 cents for machatzit shekel. You never intended to give $10 for machatzit shekel. You knew what you were supposed to give. So anything beyond that machatzit shekel didn't become holy at all. Okay? Now, she'avi mehen shekli shavin shemotar chulin. And if what the person said wasn't, these are for my shekel, but he said, I'm going to bring my half shekel from this money, then everybody agrees that nothing beyond what is needed for machatzit shekel is going to have kedusha. Because he's saying mehem, I'm going to bring from it my shekel, meaning some of it might not be shekel. So if that's the case, it's not going to acquire kedusha.
So from yesterday's daf, where they said if he designated one and he lost it, and then he did another one, another half shekel, and then after that he found the original one. They said that both of them are consecrated.
Right, and we're going to have a similar thing at the end of this. Yeah.
But okay.
Because that he definitely gave kedusha, and then he just lost it.
And so there's no way to.
And in each circumstance, it was valid.
Right.
Here, it was never valid. Right, it was never valid. So elu lechatati. A person takes money and says, I'm going to use this for my chatat, for my korban chatat. Shavin shemotar nidava. Everybody agrees that, let's say he wants to buy korban chatat with his $100, and it turns out that they're having a sale on korban chatat. It's only $80, but he designated $100, so he's got $20 change. It goes to nidava according to everybody. Why? Because basically a chatat doesn't have a fixed amount. In other words, in the case of shekel, if you say this money is going to be for my machatzit shekel and there's more than machatzit shekel there, by definition you gave too much. Mm-hmm. That's what Beit Hillel will say. But in the case of korban chatat, you could have spent all of it on a korban chatat, right? So it's not the same. So there definitely, if you consecrated the $100, even if you only spent 80, you have to give the other 20 to the Beit HaMikdash. In the case of machatzit shekel, Beit Hillel will say that the machatzit shekel is a definite amount. So when you said these are for my machatzit shekel, you meant only up to a machatzit shekel, not additional. That's the machloket between Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai. She'avi mehen chatati shavin shemotar chulin. And everybody agrees that if you said, I'm going to bring from this money my chatat, that whatever is extra, it doesn't become consecrated. In other words, if it's $100 and you said, from this $100, I'm going to buy my chatat. It turns out it's $80, so you only intended to consecrate 80 out of the 100. You didn't intend to consecrate the 100. You didn't say, this 100 is for my chatat, and then you find out that it's only 80. You said, from this 100, I'm going to buy my chatat. Which means it might not be the whole 100. It depends. Amar Rabbi Shimon said, Ma ben shekalim lachatat. What's the difference between shekel and chatat? Ela shel shekalim yesh len kitzba, ula chatat en la kitzba. That for shekalim there's a fixed amount. For chatat there is no fixed amount. You don't know how much you're going to pay. So if you say these are for my chatat, you don't know if it's going to be the whole 100 or not. So you have to consider the entire thing consecrated. When you said this money is for my machatzit shekel and there's 10 machatzit shekels, then you didn't intend to make anything more than a machatzit shekel holy. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Afla Shekalim, En Lahen Kitzba. Even for machatzit shekel, there's no fixed amount. What does he mean? Because
that's exactly what I was just thinking.
right. So he says because when the Jews came back from Babylonia, they used to give darkonot, which was a more expensive coin for machatzit shekel, a golden coin that they used to give. So it would cost more. Chazru l'shkol silaim, then they went to silaim. Chazru l'shkol tiva'in, then they went to tiva'in. And bikshu l'shkol dinarin, eventually they wanted to give dinarin even for machatzit shekel. Dinarin would be less than the machatzit shekel of the Torah, v'lo kiblu mehen. And because it was less, they didn't accept it. In other words, the way that most of the Mefarshim understand this is that dependent on the financial needs of the Beit HaMikdash at the time, they varied the machatzit shekel as long as everybody was giving the same. So when they came back to build the second Beit HaMikdash, they required darchonot, which everybody had to give a darchon, which means they're giving more than machatzit shekel, but everyone's still giving the same. Why? Because they needed more for to build the Beit HaMikdash. Later they went lower and lower, but they couldn't go any lower than the machatzit shekel of the Torah. Okay, so when they said we want to give dinarin, which would be a quarter of a shekel instead of a half, they had to say no. That's the way that most of the Mefarshim understand. The Rambam has a different understanding that what it means is that what is considered the whatever is the basic currency of that time, you bring half of it. So when the basic currency was a darchon, you brought half of a darchon. When the basic currency was this, you brought half of that. And then when the basic currency became so small that bringing half of it would be too small, that's when they stopped.
Was there a specific criteria by which they were doing calculation? Because like in economics today, if you were to make that calculation, there's a myriad of different factors that you have to take into account as to what is the equivalent of this.
Yeah, they probably used purchase power. I think they used the purchase power of it. I think so. I think that's how they determined. But in any case, Amar Rabbi Shimon says, Afal Piken Yad Kulan Shaveh. Even though it's true that the amount varied, it's still a fixed amount, says Rabbi Shimon.
Right.
It's still a fixed amount. It's whatever the amount is set, it's set.
At that time.
Right, at that particular time, it's not variable.
Right.
It's not a variable.
Right.
But chatat, ze mevi b'selav, ze mevi b'shtayim, ze mevi b'shalosh. Depending on how much you want to spend, you could bring a chatat for 3, 2, 1, depending on how much you want to spend. A cheaper one, a more expensive one, and so on. So there's no cheaper and more expensive machatzit shekel at any given time. Machatzit shekel is a fixed amount. That's what he means. So therefore, if you say this money is from a machatzit shekel, we know you only mean the half shekel of it. You don't mean the whole thing. Now the Gemara says, "Hamichanes v'chulei." Rabbi Yosef b'shem Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Yosef says in the name of Rabbi Lazar, who's obviously Rabbi Elazar without an aleph. Ma peligin. What are they arguing about? B'michanes, when the person is perotrot, taking coin by coin. He says, "I'm going to take a nickel, a quarter, a dime, a nickel," and he says, "When I get up, this is from a machatzit shekel." That's where you have the argument. The Beit Shammai says, whatever you put in the pile becomes machatzit shekel, or becomes holy. Beit Hillel says only up to machatzit shekel. Once you pass the machatzit shekel number and then you realize you put too much, those coins don't count at all. Okay? If you do it that way. However, but if there was a pile of money and you said, these are from my machatzit shekel, even Beit Hillel would say it all becomes holy. You only have to give half of a shekel of it to machatzit shekel, but it all becomes holy according to Beit Hillel. When you're counting coin by coin, Beit Hillel can say when you got up to the right number, anything you added after that didn't count. But when you have one entity of a pile of money and you say this is for my shekel, even Beit Hillel is going to say that becomes holy.
You say this is
because
this money.
Not from this.
No, not from this. This money's from. So how am I going to know which part you meant? The whole thing. Okay, so that's what Rabbi Yossi says. However, there's a machloket here. Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Beva, b'shem Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Beva have a different tradition from the same teacher. Ma peligin b'mechanes perotrot, aval be'omer el l'shikli kol alma modi'i she'amotran chulin. The opposite. That according to everybody, when you add, in other words, the machloket is, according to everyone, the case of the Mishnah is when you're taking coin by coin. The question is when there's a pile of coins. So according to the first version, when there's a pile of coins and you say this is all for my shekel, everyone agrees that it's all holy. right? According to the second version, everyone agrees in that case, even Beit Shammai agrees in that case, that whatever is beyond the machatzit shekel is chulin. It's not holy. The opposite of of the first version. Okay? Now, the reason would seem to be because in that case, there was one pile, and you didn't do any action specifically. I'm hypothesizing a little bit, but you didn't do any action to say it was for your shekel. In other words, when you're counting and saying, this is for my shekel, and you do 1, 2, 3, 4. So you took that coin in your hand and put it in the pile and said, this is all for my shekel. So you found out that you exceeded it, so Beit Shammai will say, too bad for you. Right? You put it in the pile. But when you see a pile and you say, this is for my machatzit shekel, and then you find out, oh, whoops, that was much more than I needed. You never intended, you never did anything to those coins to make the machatzit shekel, and you never intended for more than machatzit shekel. Right? So you could look at it either l'chumra, stringently, and say that when you said these are from a machatzit shekel, it's worse. Because in one fell swoop you said the whole thing is a machatzit shekel. As opposed to when you're adding onto the pile where maybe it's debatable. And you could say you didn't mean for those last things to really be included.
So, good question. There is no prohibition against giving more?
The other would go to nidavad. It goes to voluntary korbanot. It won't go to machatzit shekel, to the main fund.
But then it's not machatzit shekel. Then what?
It becomes holy, but not for machatzit shekel.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
Okay.
It becomes consecrated.
Right.
So the question is the pile case worse or better? It could be worse because in the case of the pile, you're doing it in one shot, including the whole thing. As opposed to when you're adding coin by coin, and you could say that the last few times you shoveled the coins on there didn't count. Or you could say that the pile case is actually better. Because in the case of the adding, you actually added it, and now you want to subtract it. In the case of the pile, you just said, this is going to be machatzit shekel, and you didn't realize that inside there was more than a machatzit shekel. Okay, so you could throw it either way.
But there's also, he said it's machatzit shekel, not nedava, right?
Right, but as we're going to learn, when you consecrate something that's kind of extra, it goes to nedava. That's the rule. It becomes consecrated generic.
So you don't even have to say.
I would say you could say there's specific consecration and there's generic.
Yeah.
So there's generic consecration on those coins, not specific for machatzit shekel, according to Beit Shammai, let's say.
Yeah.
Right. So now they're going to try to prove one way. So Amar Rabbi Chia matnita misayea l'Rav Bevai. Rabbi Chia said that the Mishnah supports Rabbi Bevai. How so? Ditnan, because it says in the Mishnah, Amar Rabbi Shimon, ma ben shkalim l'chatat, el shkalim yesh len kitzba, u'l'chatat en len kitzba. That shkalim, what did Rabbi Shimon say? What's the difference between machatzit shekel and chatat? That shkalim have kitzba, they have a fixed amount. Chatat doesn't have one. Correct? So now the Gemara is assuming now that this is according to that Rabbi Shimon is explaining everybody, both Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel would agree with this distinction. Okay? So ma anan kayamin, what are we talking about over here? This is like hacha b'mayaskinan in the Bavli. We say, what are we dealing with here, right? Ma anan kayamin, what are we dealing with here? Im be'omer sha'avim mehen shikli kol hamamod isha motran chulin. We can't be talking about where the guy said, I'm going to take from this for my shekel, because there everybody agrees that you didn't consecrate the whole thing. Im be'omer sha'avim mehen chatati kol hamamod isha motran chulin. And when it comes to chatat also, they're the same in that case, right? They're the same. Chatat and shekel are the same, that if you say I'm going to bring from this money, it doesn't consecrate all the money. Rather, we're talking about a case where he said, these are for my shekel. Right? And now, why does it have to be talking about that? It can't be talking about where he's taking it coin by coin, because there's a machloket between Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai. We have to find an area where they agree. And they agree that there's a distinction between shekel and chatat. So far, we only have a case where they agree, where there is no distinction between shekel and chatat, because you said, I'm going to bring from it. Right? Where do they agree when there is a distinction between shekel and chatat? You understand what I mean? When you say, I'm going to bring from this money for my chatat, or from this money for my shekel, both Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel agree that the leftovers are not consecrated. They disagree in a case where you count out coin by coin. Okay?
What's the difference? I mean,
what's the difference in what?
I mean, in both cases, he's just using a pile, and I mean. In
one case, he specifically said from this, meaning I'm not consecrating all of it.
The difference is what he
the language.
It's just the language.
Well, also the action.
Right. Well, the action. Right. So the action of doing that. Right.
You said that before.
Right. The action seems to has an effect. Yeah. If a person says this is for my khatat and he's counting out the money.
Okay, but eventually, how is he going to do it? I mean, if it's from that pile, how is the action going to be different from that?
The action is not going to be different necessarily, but the language is different in that case.
Right. So it's only
in that case, it's the language. Right. In that case, it's the language. Now, the issue is we're trying to find a case where both Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel agree on a distinction between shekel and khatat. So far, they've only disagreed.
Right.
In a case where there was a difference between shekel and khatat, Beit Hillel was saying that it's actually going to be different, and Beit Shammai was saying it's the same.
When it becomes chulin, does that have kedusha?
Chulin by definition means no kedusha.
No kedusha, right?
Nedava means it's holy, but in a generic way.
Right. So it's not the same thing because khatat,
But that's the machloket I'm saying. According to Beit Shammai, it's the same.
Okay.
According to Beit Shammai, if you say these coins are for my khatat or these coins,
kedusha, in other words, for some other purpose. In other words,
for some other purpose, right?
Okay.
Right, for some other purpose. So according to Beit Shammai, it's the same. Shekel and khatat are the same. If you count out the money and you say these are going to be for my khatat, it's the same.
Okay.
According to Beit Shammai, according to Beit Hillel, there's a difference. No. In the case of counting out money for shekel, no. For khatat, it becomes holy. Okay? Now, where is the case where they agree, but there's still a distinction? Because in the case where they agree, there is no distinction. In the case where they say, I'm going to take from this money, both khatat and shekel, only the money that you're going to use becomes holy. And they agree on that. Okay, for both khatat and shekel. So where do they agree where there's a difference between khatat and shekel? Is there such a case? So he says the only case is, Ella ken anan kayamin. Ve'omer elo l'shikli. Okay, where the person says this pile is for my shekel. Sheqalim al yidei shekitzbatan min haTorah motaran chulin. Chatat al yidei she'en kitzbatan min haTorah motaran nedava. So what he says is that it must be that Rabbi Shimon is talking about a case where there was a pile of coins and you said these are for my chatat or these are for my shekel. Why? Because in that case, in the case of machatzita shekel, you're going to say that only the amount of machatzita shekel becomes holy. In the case where we're dealing with chatat, the entire thing is going to become holy. Why? Because machatzita shekel has a limit according to the Torah already, a fixed limit, whereas chatat does not. And what does this support? This supports the second view of Rav Bevai, or Rav Beva, that said that when you look at a pile and say these are for my machatzita shekel, only machatzita shekel of it becomes holy. The rest does not. And what's the proof? Because it seems like both that Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel are going to agree that in a case where you said this pile, there must be a case where Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel agree that there's a difference between machatzita shekel and chatat. What is that case? Where you have a pile. If you say the pile of money is for machatzita shekel, only a machatzita shekel is going to be consecrated. But if you have a pile and you say this is for chatat, the entire thing is going to become consecrated because there's no fixed value. Okay? So that must be. So what does that prove? That proves that there's a case that Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel agree that if you say this is for my machatzita shekel to a whole pile of coins, only a machatzita shekel worth becomes holy. Not like the first view of Rabbi Yossi, who said that in that case where you say to the entire pile that the entire thing is going to become consecrated.
Okay.
So that would be the same as a chatat.
Right. Rabbi Yossi is more stringent than
he's more stringent. Right. He's saying Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel agree with him. There are three cases.
No, Rav Beva says that.
They both are saying there's an agreement.
Right, they're saying they're in agreement, but Rabbi Yossi is
saying they're agreement l'chumrah.
Right.
Rav Beva is saying l'chula they're in agreement. Okay? They're trying to find an agreement. Right. So they agree. No, but according to Rabbi Yossi, they're agreeing that it's the same as chatat. According to Rav Beva, they're agreeing that it's different than chatat. Because everybody agrees that if you say to a pile, this is for chatat, the whole thing becomes consecrated. So Rabbi Yossi is saying they would both agree that if you said to a whole pile, this is for my shekel, it's also consecrated. Rav Beva says if you say to a whole pile, this is machatzita shekel, it won't be consecrated. But both of them agree that Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel are going to agree about the pile. They just can't agree what they're going to agree on. Right? The two rabbis say that Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel are going to agree on the case. They just don't know what conclusion they're going to agree about the case. Right? So we're trying to prove right now the more lenient conclusion, Okay, from the Mishnah, that look, there must be a situation where both Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel agree that there's a difference between shekel and chatat. And they can't be, according to Rabbi Yossi, that wouldn't be, because according to Rabbi Yossi, the case where they agree, in both cases where they agree, chatat and shekel are the same. Either when you say, I'm going to take from this money, they both agree. Or when you say the whole pile is going to be shekel, that they both agree that it's going to become holy, according to Rabbi Yossi. Just like a chatat. And yet, what Rabbi Beva is saying is, we need to find a place where they agree, but it's different than chatat. So that's the answer. So ma avad la Rabbi Yossi. So Rabbi Yossi obviously read the Mishnah. So b'shem Rabbi Elazar should be. It seems like. So he will say. Rabbi Yossi will say, or maybe not. Maybe it's supposed to be Rabbi Eliezer. Let's see. It doesn't say. But I think it's Rabbi Lazar, it said before. So what will he say in the name of Rabbi Lazar? How will he answer the Mishnah? Doesn't the Mishnah say that there's a case where Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel agree, but they distinguish shekel from chatat? No, he'll say, that doesn't mean that they have to agree and distinguish. No, Rabbi Shimon in the Mishnah is just explaining Beit Hillel. He's not saying that there's a case where both Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel are going to agree that there's a difference between shekel and chatat. They never do. When they agree that it's the same as chatat. When they disagree, they're disagreeing because Beit Hillel is saying it's different than chatat, and Beit Shammai is saying it's the same. Okay? But when Rabbi Shimon said the difference between shekel and chatat is that shekel has a fixed amount and chatat doesn't, and therefore is saying there's a distinction between shekel and chatat, that's only according to Beit Hillel, because actually Beit Shammai always rules that they're the same, according to Rabbi Yossi.
So the only reason why they agree is because Beit Shammai agrees for everything, but
because Beit Shammai says that it's always like chatat.
Reasons.
Right. Beit Shammai thinks it's always like chatat, right, according to this.
They just agree on the action, but they don't agree necessarily on the
logic behind it.
Logic.
Right. But didn't we learn, and we're further going to try to attack Rabbi Yossi here. Motar shekalim chulin. It says that the leftover shekalim are chulin. That leftover shkalim are going to be unconsecrated. And that also seems to be a stam statement that everybody agrees on. And what case is there where Beit Shammai says that leftover shkalim are going to actually be not consecrated? Patarla, b'mechanes prototo Beit Hillel. He'll say that again, that's just talking according to Beit Hillel. That's saying according to Beit Hillel that the leftover ones go to the nidava. I guess you could also have said that when you say I'm going to bring from it, could also be that everybody would agree there also that the leftover is not holy. But the point is that Rabbi Yossi can deflect both of these proofs and stay standing in his position that Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel agree only in the case. Or they agree in the case where the pile is consecrated, that the entire pile becomes consecrated. So this machloket is still standing. Okay, now what happens to be the halacha is, in that case, the lenient way that the Rambam brings, that if there's a pile and somebody says this is from a machatzit shekel, he only means to consecrate the machatzit shekel and the rest is okay. Hamafrish shiklo, we skip the parentheses. Hamafrish shiklo, a person who separates the machatzit shekel v'savashu chayav, thinking that he has to bring it, v'nimtza she'eno chayav, and then he finds out that he wasn't obligated for whatever reason. Maybe he paid it already and he forgot. Maybe somebody did it for him. Lo it doesn't become consecrated because he didn't have an obligation. A person who separated two machatzit shekel. Why? Because he thought that he didn't pay last year. And then he found the receipt and realized he did pay last year. So what? So what should he do with the second one? The second one is leftover. He consecrated two. So nishma'ana min hadab. We can learn it from the following case. If actually, if he set aside a korban chatat and then finds out that he's not obligated to bring a korban chatat, it doesn't become holy. But if rishtayim v'savarshu chayav shtayim v'nimtza she'eno chayav ela achat ota sheniya ma'at avadla ela ro'ah. So it says, if you thought you did two violations, sometimes the Gemara will say how many violations they did, how many chataot there, like in Masechet Shabbat. Sometimes you could do one action, you're obligated in two chataot, right? So he thought he needed to bring two chataot. He really only had to bring one. He separated two. So one of them obviously he has to bring. If he didn't have any obligation at all, then even the first one wouldn't be consecrated. But if he had an obligation for one, not two, so his act of consecration was valid, but it was too expensive. the extent of the consecration was too much. The act of consecration was valid because he needed a korban chatat, but he extended it to 2 chataot instead of 1, so to speak.
It's still okay.
So the consecration is chal. The consecration is effective, but he doesn't have to bring 2 korbanot chatat. He can't bring 2 chataot.
But he's still...
One of them, yes. What does he do with the second one? He leaves it lirot. He leaves it to pasture until it develops a mum. When it develops a blemish of age or whatever, then he will redeem it for money, and the money goes to nidava. But the point is, he can't unconsecrate it. We don't say, since you only needed 1 korban chatat, the second one is nothing. We don't say that. If you didn't need any, and you consecrated a korban chatat, it would be nothing. But since you needed 1, and you just extended it too far and you thought you needed 2, the second one attains kedusha, but it attains what we said is the generic kedusha. Generic kedusha means you have to leave it till it develops a blemish. You redeem it for money, you take the money and you put it for nidava, for voluntary extra korbanot, meaning communal korbanot that are extra.
What's that called in Hebrew?
Nidava? Yiblu nidava?
No, the animal that develops a moon.
It calls it ro'eh. It goes out to pasture, or ro'ah if it's a girl. Chatat is a female.
Chulin would be called.
Chulin is not holy at all. There's nothing. Yeah, it's nothing at all. So it's saying the same. It's saying that we should say really the same thing. That just like in a korban chatat, the rule is that if you consecrated more than you needed, the second one, if you needed 1 but you consecrated 2, the second one still has a consecration, and you take the money and you put it in nidava, which means you give it to the Beit HaMikdash and they bring extra korbanot with it. Okay. Now, if however, so the same thing for machatzit shekel. You should say the first one you needed, the second one is consecrated, but the consecrated one will be consecrated generically. It'll go into the generic fund, not into the machatzit shekel fund. So the Gemara says no, it doesn't like that. So hachinami. So you're going to tell me the same here, but it says elul nidava, that it should go to nidava, but it says v'ka he'ach omerata elul. How can you say that about this? And it just leaves it as it's very funny. The Yerushalmi is so terse and so unexplained. It just says, how can you say that about this?
It's not do that before, though?
Not comparable.
Didn't that sort of thing come up before, and it was established that shekel and
chatat are different?
That's
exactly what the Gemara is saying, referring to. In other words, it's saying, because it has a fixed amount, there's no such thing as I accidentally consecrated 2 machatzit shekel. There's no such thing. Because there can only be 1. Right? It's not like a korban chatat where I could have taken this $500 and bought 1 korban chatat. Instead, I bought 2 because I thought I needed 2.
I know, but
right?
But the Gemara is saying something different here, because it says that Omer ata elu. In other words, here it says 1 you designated it, the other one you did. In other words, 1 you said like a Sheqalim, you said that's from a Sheqalim.
Right?
Isn't that what it's saying?
Because it's saying you had 2. You did 2, and this time on purpose you did 2, but you did it on purpose, but it was mistaken. Right? So, right, you did it on purpose. Right, you thought that you were owing 1 from last year, so you did it again. You did 2 on purpose. It's not like Elu where you said, I just want machatzit shekel to be out of that. You said, I want 2 machatzit shekel. Here's the 2 machatzit shekel right here. Right? But
doing it because you forgot.
You thought you were owed from last year. You were paying up last year, so you took 2.
Right, yeah.
So you took 2 coins. So the question is, what about the second one? So it's saying it's not like korban chatat where it's a little bit fluid. You could have brought a cow of $500, a big fat cow, instead you brought a skinny one. For it's not a cow, but
You brought 2.
That guy got 2.
Here you brought 2
Here you
cows.
brought 2 cows, or it's not cows, but let's say sheep or whatever, right?
Sheep. So, but it's not like you said, I could have spent $1,000.
But the point is, since it's a fluid thing that you could have extended, in other words,
1 to 2.
It looks at, because the Gemara looks at it in terms of value. Looks in terms of value. So it's saying chatat value. It looks at. So it looks at. You basically you had an obligation to bring a chatat, which means you had the power to invest chatatness into a certain monetary value animal, right? And you poured it into 2 cups, basically instead of 1. So what happens to the second one? As opposed to machatzit shekel, where it's not that there's a chatatness, it's not that there's a machatzit shekelness that can be invested in 1 coin or 2 coins. There's just a coin. That's it. You can think of it that way. Okay? So therefore, in the case of chatat, it could be that you extended it over 2 animals. The chatat quality over 2 animals. Instead of concentrating it in 1. Whereas machatzit shekel is just an amount of money.
Right, exactly.
There's no way to do it.
Right. Exactly.
Right, so that's what the Gemara is answering. So therefore, the second machatzit shekel is not going to become holy at all. So Rabbi Yehuda said that they changed the coin value over time. So darkonot, dinarin, So one second. What is that going on? That little letter. Oh, it's going on something else. So it says Chazru lishkos tila'in. So it's telling you what it is. Darkonot are dinarin. Darkonot are the golden coins. Okay. Chazru lishkos tila'in. What is la'in? Kishmu'an. That's what they are. The meaning of sela, the coin that they had at the time. Chazru lishkol tiva'in. Okay. What is tiva'in? Palgei sela'in. Half of a sela, which is actually a machatzit shekel. So bikshu lishkol dinarin, which is kartin, that would be a quarter of a shekel. Velo kiblu alehen. They wouldn't allow that. In other words, as the economy changed or the needs changed, according to most of the Mefarshim, they kept lowering the amount. So eventually they wanted to give a quarter shekel. They said you can't go lower. Min hada. Where do we know that they didn't accept it? Because it says ve'emadnu alenu. It said because we placed upon ourselves mitzvah latet alenu shelishita shekel b'shana la'avodat beit Eloheinu. They said we're going to give a third of a shekel for the avodat beit Eloheinu. So the third of a shekel, they said that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to give the third of a shekel. We wanted to give less than the required amount. Okay, so that obviously can't be done, and that's why it wasn't accepted. It wasn't accepted as valid. So now that's one possible interpretation, but the way that the Korban Ha'idah interprets it is that this third that's being talked about here is talking about of a larger coin, and it's trying to show you that because the assumption is that they couldn't have really given a third of a shekel ever, because that wouldn't be acceptable. So when it says a third of a shekel, it means a third of a much larger coin, and that they were giving more than a machatzit shekel is the point of the piece in value.
So then, if there's a precedent for redefining the value of the shekel, and you had to follow that, so then here, when we give the half shekel, is there really? I mean, this is when you say or whoever says it's $10 the half shekel. We are measuring the
biblical half shekel.
Is that a serious thing?
Yeah, we're measuring the biblical half shekel.
But that's a serious thing.
Yeah, we're measuring the biblical one. Yeah, according to the biblical one, because they couldn't have done less than that.
So
we're measuring it based on silver.
You put down $5 and you pick it up. You're not really taking a half shekel right now in our shul.
Well, you're not really doing it anyway because you're not giving it to the Beit HaMikdash. So really just a minhag anyway.
Okay.
It's really a custom, right? It's really a custom anyway. But in the Beit HaMikdash times they would have to do it.
Of course. Yeah.
Right. So he explains also in the Tiklin Chaditin on the bottom that from the fact that it says ve'emadnu al atzmeinu, that they had to establish for themselves the amount to give, it shows you that it was variable. Okay, it shows you that there was a variable involved. So it doesn't mean that they gave less than a shekel. It means that we had to establish what was the quantity, and it was a third of whatever the coin was that was in currency then that they had to give, that corresponded to the correct amount that was given. So it just shows you that it was a variable. So Rabbi Chilkiah b'shem Rav Acha. Rabbi Chilkiah said the name Rav Acha. Mikan sh'tzrich adam l'shalesh sheklo geva pamim b'shana. From here you see that a person should give a shekel 3 times a year. Now what this seems to mean is not that you have to give machatzit a shekel 3 times a year, because we know that that's not true. But what it means is that a person should give should give tzedakah a minimum of 3 times a year. He should try to make sure that he gives some kind of a donation at least 3 times a year. As it says, because the word shlishit in the pasuk can't be referring to the amount that they gave, according to this drash. It's a drash, but he's saying it can't be the amount that they gave, because they gave machatzit shekel, not a third. So what does it mean when it says that when it says shlishit? It means that they gave 3 times. They gave 3 times. Okay? And moreover, mikan she'en matrichin ala tzibur. It also means that we don't do appeals more than 3 times a year to the community for funds. Because shlishit means 3 times is enough. You should give 3 times a year, and you should ask for money 3 times a year, not more. Rabbi Yavin says, Mikan l'gimel sa'in, Mikan l'shalosh kupot, Mikan l'shalosh hafrashot. As we're going to learn further on in the Masechet, the way that they did machatzit shekel was that they had 3 kupot, they had 3 baskets. Each basket had 3 sa'in of coins of silver that were given as machatzit shekel, and they would do terumat. They would do a terumah. They would take some 3 times a year from the various kupot. They would take 3 times a year, and from that would be actually purchased the korbanot. They didn't need all the money. The rest of the money would be saved for the general fund. They did a trumah so that everyone had a chance, basically, that they were participating in the in the purchase of the korbanot. It says this is what they should give. All those who are counted in the census should give machatzit shekel. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Nechemia. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Nechemia argue. One says, this is very interesting, because they sinned at half of the day. In other words, they sinned at midday with the golden calf. They have to give half of a shekel. Machatzit yom, the middle of the day, the middle of shekel. That it's the same idea basically. Since they sinned at the 6th hour of the day, they should give machatzit shekel, which is made up of 6 garmasin, some coin that they had at the time. Okay, so the point is that it's somehow symbolic of correcting a tikkun for the egel hazahav. Rabbi Yoshua be Rabbi Nechemia b'shem Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yoshua in the house of Rabbi Nechemia said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, the fish avru ala seret diberot yenoten kol echad v'echad asra gera. We know that a shekel is esrim gera. They had to give half of a shekel, which is 10 gera. Why did they have to give 10 gera? Because they violated the 10 commandments. Aseret diberot. Rabbi Berechia, Rabbi Levi, b'shem Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. Rabbi Berechia said that Rabbi Levi said in the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, the fish machru bechora shel Rachel be'esrim kesef. Yeah, kol echad v'echad podet beno bechoro be'esrim kesef. Since the brothers sold the bechor, sold the firstborn of Rachel, meaning Yosef, they sold him for 20 pieces of silver. So we have to pay 20 pieces of silver to redeem our firstborn sons.
What does 20 pieces of silver have to do with machatzit shekel?
Absolutely nothing yet.
Oh, okay.
Nothing yet. It's an intro. Okay.
Oh.
So it's saying it's an intro. So just like they paid they got 20 pieces of silver for Yosef, we pay 20 pieces of silver for when you do Pidyon Haben. And Rabbi Pinchas b'shem Rabbi Levi, and Rabbi Pinchas said in the name of Rabbi Levi, lefi shemacharu bechora shel Rachel be'esrim kesef, v'nafal lekol echad v'echad mehem tiba'a. Since each one of them, if they had 10, there were 10, a value of 10 coins of silver was given to the brothers for selling Yosef. And they split it among the 10 of them, because remember, Binyamin wasn't there. Yosef wasn't there, so there's only 10 guys there. So out of the 10, each one got 2 coins, which is called a tiba'ah here. So that's why, that's the value of machatzit shekel. Okay? It's the value of machatzit shekel, so they would have to give a half a selah, half of a shekel each, as a tikkun for the half shekel that each of them took for selling. In other words, when they split up the money that they got from Yosef between all of them, among all of them, so each one received a half a shekel, so you have to give a half shekel each year for the Beit HaMikdash. Now we turn to Amud Bet. No halacha, it's perfectly aligned. You see that? Yeah, it's Min HaShamayim. Yeah, so halacha Daled says Motar Sheqalim Cholin. Extra money left over from Sheqalim is Cholin. Now again, this is talking about according to Beit Hillel, when you're counting it out, one at a time. Whatever's left over, if you have extra, it's going to be Cholin. Motar Asiri Taifa, we're going to see what Asiri Taifa means. The Gemara is going to assume at first that it means the 10th of an ephah that the Kohen Gadol brought every day as an offering. Any money that was set aside for that's extra is going to be in this category. Motar kinei zavin, kinei zavot, kinei yoledot, chatot vashamot. Money that was left over from the birds brought by zavot or zavin, or by women who gave birth, or sin offerings of various kinds, chataot and hashamot, whatever's left over of the funds for all of these things. Motaran nidava. They have generic consecration, but not specific. This is the role koshuba, Shem chatat mishum ashma. Anything that comes for the sake of a chatat or for an asham, motaran nidava. The extra goes to nidava. Okay, that's the rule, because you can't bring an extra chatat. You don't have a sin offering obligation. So what do you do with the money? You put it to nidava. You put it to generic consecration. However, motar olah leolah. If you had money for an olah and it's left over, you can bring an olah with it. It can go towards the money for another olah, because you're allowed to bring a burnt offering for no reason. Motar mincha lemincha, motar shilamim leshilamim. And the same with the mincha. You can bring a voluntary mincha. You can bring a voluntary shilamim. So if you had extra money, put it towards the next shilamim. It's no problem. Okay. Motar Pesach l'shlamim. If you had leftover money for the Pesach, or even a leftover Pesach itself. In other words, you had the Korban Pesach was left over somehow because you lost the Korban Pesach, and then you designated another one, and the original one came back. It could be a shlamim. Motar nizirim l'nizirim. If they used to collect a fund for poor nizirim to pay for their korbanot, if they have leftover money, it goes to future ones. Motar Nazir Lindava. And if a particular Nazir set aside money for his korbanot and it gets left over, so he can buy, it can go to the general fund. Okay, it can go to the general fund. So we have rules here basically for how do we deal with surplus in various korbanot. What happens to the consecrated monies or even to the consecrated animals in some cases. So the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yossi says, Ad Anataman. Sham'it Kal Rav Yehuda Sha'al Shmuel. When I was over there, when I was in Babylonia, I heard Rav Yehuda ask Shmuel, Hifrish Shiklov Amet, if a person separates their machatzit shekel and then they die, what should be done with the money? Should it be cancelled out because a person died? Amar Lei said to him, Yiplu Indava. It should go to the general fund of voluntary offerings, voluntary additional offerings. Motar asiri taifa shelo. If it's asiri taifa shelo, if it's talking about the Kohen Gadol would bring every day a tenth of an ephah. If he has extra money that he set aside, he has to pay for it every day. If he has extra money set aside, what should he do with it? Rabbi Yochanan Amar Yolichem Liyam HaMelach. He says he has to throw it into the Dead Sea. Rabbi Lazar Amar Yiplu Lindava. Rabbi Lazar says it should go into the general fund for communal extra korbanot. It doesn't have to go into the Dead Sea. So Rabbi Yochanan is saying it can't be used for anything else, but it can't be benefited from. It has kedusha, but you can't use it.
You say you throw the money into it?
Yeah, you throw the money into the Dead Sea because it can't be used. Right, it can't be used for anything because it was designated for Asiri Taifa, for the Kohen. It was designated for the Kohen Gadol's sacrifice of a daily mincha. So the Kohen itself becomes holy, but you can't use it for anything else. So the question is, Matnita Pligal Rabbi Yochanan, Motar Sheqalim Chulin, Motar Asiri Taifa, Motar Kinei Zavim, Motar Kinei Zavot, Motar Kinei Yoledot Hatot Vashamot, Motar Nidava. Our Mishnah itself explicitly says the opposite of what Rabbi Yochanan says, because our Mishnah just said that the extra money for the Asiri Taifa goes to the voluntary korbanot, the extra korbanot that were brought on the Mizbeach when there was nothing going on. They would bring these extra communal korbanot so that it would always be running. Okay, so what is Rabbi Yochanan saying? How could Rabbi Yochanan say you throw it into the Dead Sea? The Mishnah says that it goes to the general fund. Answer is Rabbi Yochanan patarla motar asiri taifa shel minchat choteh. There's a difference. That's talking about an individual's, because there's such a thing as a minchat choteh, as a person who sins for a korban olev yored, certain sins that you do, where if you're poor you can bring a lower level, a sliding scale korban chatat, and if you're very poor you can bring a mincha. You can bring a flour offering. Let's say a person, for example, violated an oath that they took. So the punishment is that they have to bring a korban chatat, but it's a korban olev yored, which means if you're very poor, you bring a lower level. You can bring birds. Olev yored is sliding scale. Olev yored goes up, goes down.
Or is like more flexibility?
It's more flexibility. If you can afford it, you bring an animal. If you can't afford that, you bring birds. If you can't afford that, you bring flour.
And flour, it's the most flexible.
Right. So you have choices. So you bring the minchat choteh. So the minchat choteh person, the person who was poor and was going to bring a sin offering as a flour offering, and what happened was that he had extra money left over from what he set aside. So that money goes into the general fund. But the Kohen Gadol's offering, the money from that, can't go into the general fund. It has to go into the Yam HaMelach, according to Rabbi Yochanan. Shel Kol Yisrael. Shel Kol Yisrael, Minchat Choteh Shel Kol Yisrael. This is talking about a Minchat Choteh of a regular Jew, not the Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol, according to Rabbi Yochanan, his daily offering has to go into the Yam HaMelach if there's any extra. It's not the same as a regular Jew's offering. Rabbi Yossi Amar Alda Alil Abba Barba. About the following halacha, Abba Barba raised an objection. The Inun Amrim, because in Babylonia they said Minayin Shepesach Mishtaneh L'Shem Shelamim. That how do we know? They said in Babylonia that the Pesach becomes a Shelamim. In other words, if the Pesach passes its time, it passes the time of Pesach, or it's before Pesach and you slaughter it by accident ahead of time. Okay. So it becomes a shelamim. Talmud lomar v'im minaton korbano lezevach shelamim, because it says if from the flock is his korban lezevach shelamim, it becomes a zevach shelamim. Kol shu minaton ba shelamim. Anything that comes from the flock comes as a shelamim. In other words, it will automatically revert to being a shelamim if you sacrificed it beforehand, you slaughtered it ahead of time or after the time.
Which obviously still has kedusha.
It still has kedusha, but it's a korban pesach. So Hetivun, he raised an objection. He said, "Hare olam minaton." But an olah can also come from the flock. So why don't you say that a korban olah that it can become a shlamim? Well, why only a korban pesach? So the answer, davar she'eno ba'ela minatzon yatzat olah shiba afilu min habakar, because we're talking about something that can only come from sheep or goats. It says, V'minatzon korbanot lezevach shelamim. That pasuk is telling you that something that only comes from sheep or goats reverts to being a shelamim. Okay? So,
the case in Korban Pesach?
Korban Pesach can only be mina bakarom. It can only be from a sheep or goat. Okay, so therefore, if you slaughter it, a korban olah on some other, let's say, the person had a korban olah, and how does he explain it on the side? What exactly the case is? So he says, "Hare olah minatzon." It says, "Minale dekarev davka shelamim." Right. So how do you know? So dilma karev nami olah. That seems more right. Yeah. So he says, so exactly what he says is what I was thinking. Right. So that's what I assumed. No, it's the Korban Haida commentary. So what he says, it makes more sense to me too. So he's saying that what it's saying here is, what if you have a leftover olah? Can it be a shalamim? In other words, an olah that either you already discharged your obligation and you have an extra one, or it means that extra money from an olah that was left over, why can't I use that to buy a shalamim? Just like if I have a korban pesach, or extra money from a korban pesach, or I have a korban pesach itself that I slaughtered at the wrong time, it becomes shalamim.
Well, yeah, I mean, we already established that.
Right, so why don't I say the same as korban olah? Because korban olah could be not only from sheep or goats. Right? That's what the Gemara is answering. Now, so he asks the question, but Heitivun, Hare Asham, what about Korban Asham? Asham can only come from a keves. Korban Asham can only be a sheep. Mm-hmm. Right? So maybe there, if I have a Korban Asham and I had extra money, I should be able to buy Shilamim from that. It should work that way. So Amar Rabbi Bon Bar Kahana minatzon davar shuba mikol atzon yatsa asham sheino ba ela mina ilim. Okay, so he says that that's only when do we say that something reverts to being a shalamim, or that extra money will become money of a shalamim? That's only with a korban pesach, because it can come from either sheep or goats. But a korban asham can only come from elim, only from sheep, not from goats. So it's limited. It's again limited. So since it's limited, that pasuk of im minatzon korbanot lezevach shelamim is only talking about a korban pesach, which can only come from sheep or goats and nothing else. Bilvat, okay? Whereas an asham can come only from kivasim or elim, from sheep alone. Okay, so now the Gemara asks, "Bechol atar atamar min limaet." Normally, when it says min, it means to limit. V'kan atmar min lirabot. Here, you're telling me that the fact that it says min atzon means from all kinds of tzon. That's inclusive. Isn't min supposed to be a limiter? Amar Rabbi Mana hachinami min limaet miut she'eno ba ben shtei shanim miut she'eno ba nekeva. Here, the word min is coming as a limiter. It's coming to tell you min atzon, that it can only be under 2 years old. It has to be in its first year. And min also means that it can't come as a female. It has to be a male only. Okay, but the word hatzon, the Mefarshim explain, the word hatzon tells you it has to be from any kind of flock, meaning sheep or goats. So the Korban Pesach,
even though the Torah, when it says son, it says sheep or goats.
Right, minatzon. Here it says vim minatzon korban lezevach shelamim. That pasuk.
But the term, it says the term son, flock includes both sheep.
Includes sheep or goats. Yeah.
Okay.
So So what it's saying is that when it comes to the Korban Pesach, that's the only time that this rule is going to apply.
Right.
Okay, that if you have a Korban Pesach that's extra somehow, that it was either because it was slaughtered at the wrong time, or because they had extra money or whatever, that it goes to Shilamim. But that's only Korban Pesach, nothing else.
So is there a term that the Torah uses to indicate sheep or goat only?
Hatzon.
Oh, that's
what it's saying. Hatzon.
So that's hatzon, but when it's just son, is
it could mean one. It could be less than. Or it doesn't necessarily mean both.
I see.
Right? Vegabe asham namin min lima'et. So when even by asham, min means to limit. Sheino ba elamina elim bilvad, that it can only come from elim, only from adult sheep. Okay, Hetivun, they raise an objection, but it says v'minatzon korbano mina kevasim u'mina izim le'olah. It says if your korban comes from the tzon, right, comes from the flock, from the sheep or the goats, le'olah, it should become an olah. So maybe that means that the extra money from the Pesach or the extra Pesach itself should go to be a korban olah, not a shalamim.
And korban olah again is
a burnt offering.
It's just a bird, okay.
Right, so me'ata motara pesach ba'olah, we can conclude from this that maybe it comes as an olah instead of a shalamim. Amar Rabbi Abun, mishanin, davar shehu la'achila, davar shehu la'achila, ve'en mishanin. Davar shehu la'achila, davar shehu la'achila. He says, when we're going to switch a korban from one thing to another, let's say we have money for a pesach and it's extra, we have whatever, we don't change from a korban that is eaten to one that isn't eaten. And since a korban pesach is eaten, we want to switch it to a shalamim. Whereas if you switch it to a korban olah, you're switching it to a korban that's not eaten.
Which is a higher
kedusha. That's the next answer though, because next Amar Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Bon. Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Bon says, Mishanin kodashim kalim l'shem kodashim kalin. Then Mishanin kodashim kalim l'shem kodashim. We go from a lighter kedusha to a lighter kedusha. We don't go from a korban pesach, which is kodashim kalim, to kodashim kodashim. Rabbi Yochanan Amar. Rabbi Yochanan says, Alda alil Rabbi Hanina. This was the thing that Rabbi Hanina argued about. And they said in Babylonia, Amrin ena pesach mishtaneh l'shem shalamim. That the korban pesach doesn't become a shalamim unless you slaughtered it for the sake of shalamim. In other words, if you slaughtered it stam, even at the wrong time, it wouldn't become a shalamim automatically. You have to think that it's going to be a shalamim. And I say even if you slaughtered it l'shem olah, it becomes a shalamim. In other words, according to the other chachamim, you have to think to yourself, I'm slaughtering this to become a shalamim.
But that doesn't help. What he's saying is that doesn't help, even if you say it's shalamim. I mean, if you say it's olah, it always becomes shalamim, whether it's pesach or olah. It becomes shalamim.
Rabbi Yochanan is saying it doesn't matter what your kavanah is.
What your kavanah is, it becomes shalamim.
According to the other chachamim, he's saying they were saying that you need to say it's for shalamim, for it to change. It doesn't automatically become a shalamim.
Keeps its status.
Right.
Okay.
So Amar Rabbi Ila says, Tamad Rabbi Yochanan im minaton korbanot lezevach shalamim koshu zevach bashalamim. That Rabbi Yochanan said anything that's a zevach comes as a shalamim. In other words, automatically it's going to become a shalamim. Umishtaneh lemachashevet pesul. Okay, and he says that it changes lemachshevet pesul. So what that means is to say that. And it's a question actually. Mishtaneh lemachshevet pesul olo is a question. So the Korban Haidah says, Im shechatol l'shem olah mi ba'ilei. Im ota machshava poselet ba'olah poselet gam bo olo. Which means to say, if a person slaughters it l'shem olah, like Rabbi Yochanan is saying, what happens? Do we apply rules of olah to the Korban or not? He's saying it becomes a shalamim. But to what extent? So the Gemara asks, what's the difference? Hech avida shechata l'shem olah al menat lizrok dama lemachar mikol makom pasulo. In other words, if you slaughtered it l'shem olah and said to yourself, I'm also thinking I'm gonna apply the blood to the altar tomorrow. So there were two things you did wrong. First of all, you said it's going to be l'shem olah when really it's supposed to be l'shem shalamim. And second of all, you said, I'm going to throw the blood on the altar tomorrow. So you did something that makes it even worse. The Gemara says, but mikol makom pasul, it's still going to be pasul. What's the difference? Right. So in Temar, if you say Mishnah l'machshevet pasul, if you say that intention that you had to make it a korban olah it changes the nature of the korban, so pigul, so then it's also pigul. In Temar, en Mishnah l'machshevet pasul, pigul. So the pigul means that when you have an intention which is wrong, like for example, you say, I'm going to eat this beyond the time that's allowed to be eaten, or you say I'm going to put the blood on the altar beyond the period of time that that it's allowed to be applied. Like I'm going to apply it tomorrow instead of today. So in that case, right? So not only is it invalid, but it's pigul. Now, if you eat the meat, you're eating meat of it's a more serious violation. Yeah, it has karet. So what happens in this case? So basically, the question is it? As the Korban Haidah explains on the side. So he says, if you said one of these things. So he says, "V'hachi perusho im mishtaneh lemachshevet pesul im chishev al olah laktir b'saro lemachar pigulu v'im eno mishtaneh havele kechishev al b'sar shalamim laktir b'saro lemachar pasulu v'lo pigul." So if you thought to yourself, in other words, the point is that a korban has to be in every other respect valid for it to be pigul. There can't be more than one problem with the korban and it still be pigul.
Oh, right.
That has to be the only problem.
It was already pasul.
Right. So the question is, if I already messed it up by saying it's going to be a korban olah,
then you don't have to worry.
Then I don't have to worry about the pigul because it's already messed up. What's the difference? Right, but if I say that saying korban, this is a korban olad, really doesn't make any difference at all. Right, it doesn't change the status at all. It's just a regular korban shalamim. Now, if I add another invalidation, it could be pigul. Right, because it's basically kasher, except for the fact that it has this incorrect intention attached to it. And so Rabbi Yochanan that question isn't resolved by the Gemara, but Rabbi Yochanan is saying that his position is that even if you said the wrong thing, it's still going to be a korban shalamim. It's not going to change. Not going to change its status. The only question is, if you say that and you add another invalidation, are we going to call that pigul or not? And that question isn't resolved by the Gemara.